Hello, and welcome to Body Acceptance, your podcast for trauma informed yoga, intuitive eating, and self love. Normally, we speak German in this podcast, so you might think, why is she suddenly speaking English? It's because today's guest speaks English. Today, we speak to Kim Stacey, founder of Body Image Fitness, a weight neutral gym based in Newcastle, UK. Kim shares her story with diet culture with us. And then later on, for the second part of the podcast episode, Kim will interview me. So you'll both get to hear me interviewing Kim about her experience and Kim interview me. If you want to look into the timestamps for both of these interviews, you can look into the show notes. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Great. So, Kim Stacey, so happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And I'm really, really happy to be here and speaking to you.
Great, same. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, about your journey, and sort of how you started your own company?
Yeah, so my name's Kim Stacey. I am the owner, head coach, founder of Body Image Fitness. So this is a complete non-diet platform focusing on improving people's relationship towards their bodies, towards exercise, towards foods. I say food and there's an ice cream van, like literally you're driving past. I don't know if you can hear the music. And yeah, so it has much like a lot of other people in the non-diet space. Obviously, my journey has started with being very heavily in diet culture, and it was in lockdown where my disordered eating and exercise addiction was incredibly intense, severe, anxiety provoking, took over my life, you know, all of the bad things. And I took part in a transformation challenge at my local gym, and the the prize at the end of the transformation challenge was a photo shoot. And
That sounds horrendous.
I was very little calories. I was exercising intensely. I was, you know, the smallest I'd ever been. I was still being told by family members, by people around me, keep going, you're nearly there. You know, in other words, still not good enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I didn't win the challenge. I'm very grateful that I didn't in hindsight, but at the time I was like, oh God, I literally could not have done it anymore. And the advice that the people that were running the challenge gave was, the night before the photo shoot, make sure that you are really you drink a whole bottle of wine, so you're really
Oh
dehydrated.
God.
So for the photo shoot, you basically your skin's really thin, your muscles will pop, and you'll, you know, and for the look, quote unquote, look of health. And that was a real eye-opener. And this particular gym had health in their name, ironically. And
Wow.
yeah, so I was very eye-opened, and then I just sort of started looking, realizing that this really isn't healthy. Like I literally don't know what else I can do to try and fit into this mold that I'm supposed to fit into. I'm not healthy. I'm literally starving myself. So yeah. And then it took a year or so to kind of like really convert into more of a weight neutral approach, to work on my own body image. And I have always loved fitness. I've always loved the way it made me feel. I'm one of those people that's lucky enough to experience quite high levels of endorphins when I exercise. And so it's like a natural high. I'm so happy after I've done some intense movement, usually is when it, you know, like a spin class or something. And but I never felt good enough. I never felt that my body was good enough to teach fitness, because it was of that narrative of like, you need to look a certain way in order to do it. So After working on myself, I realized actually I am good enough. My body is not the problem. So I am going to teach it. And then I have created what I've created from that.
That's amazing. I'm curious because it's maybe not even that easy to find weight neutral resources. What was something that you came across? Was there a certain person, a book, whatever helped you?
The book that stands out was The Beauty Myth by Naomi Wolf. I talk about this book all the time.
We'll
It
put it
was
in the show notes.
yeah, not many people I don't think have heard of it or read it. It is quite an intense book, and when I read it, well, I listened to it. I'm more of an audiobook person. I was like, no, this is a conspiracy theory. Surely not. Like, no. But it all made sense. And it all was like, yeah, okay, I need to like look into this a bit more. And then I think it's you come across podcasts. Christy Harrison's Anti-Diet is another book that I listened to quite early on, because that's a really great book because it talks about like the history and goes into a lot of detail. And yeah, so it was just kind of, it was that. And I once I get passionate about something, I'm really 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 like become obsessed with it. And it's been an obsession for me since I first discovered this different approach.
It's amazing because I feel like once you manage to break out of this cycle, then you discover it's sort of like a curtain opens and there's this whole other world that exists that is, non-diet, weight neutral. It's about how you feel, not what you look like. And it's almost like a parallel universe almost.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing for you that you discovered it and you managed to break out, and now that you get to help so many people. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your company, Body Image Fitness, and how that all came about?
So originally went and got my qualifications for to be a personal trainer. And I then started, I just was on my Instagram and just was like, oh, does anyone fancy booking onto some classes? Like, here they are if you do. And then loads of people did. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then they kept coming, and then I was like, oh, I'll do like a 4 week, I'll sell like a 4 week package and then have a break. And then they were just really popular. And then I just thought, eventually then I collaborated with a yoga teacher, and who was local to Newcastle. And we did kind of like a collaboration. And then I then started working with other people, and then it became a membership. And then now I think it's about 12 instructors. We've got an app and we offer classes, live classes 7 days a week. We've got a huge library of on-demand sessions. All of the instructors come from the same ethos of it being completely weight neutral. We've got an intuitive eating counsellor, we've got body image support sessions, we've got a community of nearly 140 members, and then we've got other people that pay kind of like pay as you go and passes and things. So we've got a lovely community that's just growing and that is so supportive. And it's just really really a really lovely thing to witness. And it's just slowly evolving into this, I don't want to sound cheesy, but I like this magical this like, not magical, I can't think of any other word right now that's less cheesy, but this place that's just such an amazing support, mentally, for people, that has got no judgment, there's no shame, people can just be who they are, which is so important.
Oh yeah, I know when you said what other word is there, and I thought that I don't I don't think there is another word because it really describes it as well. I mean, I'm part of being an instructor there, and it's such a safe space, or at least a safer space. And yeah, it's really nice how everyone is just able to be who they are, and there's nothing, like no sort of compulsion and no objective and no transformation, and none of these buzzwords are being used, and that's just so nice. So when did you start this?
So Body Image Fitness is just over 3 years old. It turned 3 the end of May. So yeah, we've been going for 3 years officially. So
Amazing. Happy belated birthday.
thank you.
How was the training to become an instructor? Because I could imagine maybe that's sort of an area where you sort of cross paths
Yeah,
with diet culture once again.
it was early into my discovery of non-diet. And then as I got further into the course, I got further and further into non-diet. And so the problem that I found, one of the many problems, was inevitably when you've been starving yourself, as we know, you lose weight, and then you stop doing that, you put on weight. And I know Christy Harrison, she talks about, I think it's Christy Harrison, like a pendulum of, you restrict, and then you need to come back, you need to go right to the other end. And I was, when I was studying for my fitness qualification, I went right the other end, and I started putting on weight, and I put on weight quite quickly, because I was in that kind of like effort mentality of like an angry at diet culture and angry at the world, angry at the fitness industry. I still am angry, but I'm funneling that in a much healthier way. And yeah, so that was difficult, because each time I'd go to like a workshop, a lot of it was online, but you'd have to go to like workshops and assessments, and I felt like my body was, it's that whole thing of like, well, I'm the biggest person in this room, and what are they thinking? And actually they didn't really care. In reality, it was more me. But it was difficult, because this particular course, for example, there was a module that you had to take called exercise for fat loss. And of course you've got like the nutrition side of it, which is so basic.
Yeah.
And we had to come up with a particular project where I had my sister as my guinea pig, and I had to work out how many calories she should be on to the exact number. And I got marked down because I gave her like a ballpark, and I was told, no, you need to give her the exact amount of calories that she should be aiming for every single day. And I'm like, surely not. Like, and I know that it was more of a thing to show that you knew the maths and that you could work it out, but for a real world scenario, that's like, how is that health?
Yeah.
How is any of it health? Like, it's to give someone that they have to fit exactly that number. Yeah, and so there was many things. It was very heavily focused on BMI, very like contraindications were quote unquote obesity. You weren't allowed to work with a quote unquote obese client because of contraindications.
The joints.
Because of their, yeah, and it's just like so frustrating. And I'm almost glad that I was at the start of my discovery when I first started it, because I think I would have been a lot more outspoken, and I probably would have been kicked off the course.
Yeah.
How outrageous some of the stuff is. So yeah, but it goes to show why so many people in the fitness industry are the way they are, because if the education is, so fat phobic,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, it's not me, it's what I've been taught. This is, and it must be true because this is in the education. And yeah.
Someone has to break that cycle though, eventually.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you broke it. So with Body Image Fitness, you have a corporation or sort of a contract with the NHS, right? With the British National Health Service. Do you want to tell us how that all came about and sort of the journey of what this has been replacing?
Yeah. So they a manager got in a manager of a healthy lifestyle project got in touch with me April last year. She found me on Instagram actually, and she got in touch with me and said she was doing a project. She's very aware of the limitations and the way that current the NHS currently approaches health is they're aware of the damaging approach, and they wanted me to go in there and basically educate the primary care workers on weight stigma and the damaging effects of weight stigma, and to sort of I provided like lived experiences. So I interviewed a lot of people, which was a very emotional week. It was emotion. I was interviewing all these people with all that told me all about their experiences with weight stigma and the NHS. And so I did like a toolkit, and then I did some awareness sessions. And this was to a primary care network in Nottingham. And then off the back of that, they want me to offer the Body Image Fitness membership to a select group of patients, to offer them an alternative to something traditionally that would be offered, so something like Slimming World. So it's basically taking away the weight centric view of let's focus on the number of the scales and that will make you healthier, versus actually let's not do that. And let's, obviously the ethos that Body Image Fitness has, and it's quite groundbreaking in a way, because it's like, this is it's controversial to some people. I know to us it's not. It's a no-brainer. This is what it should be like. So yeah, I'm just waiting for that contract, waiting for that contract to be finalized, and then the patients can start on the membership. They're going to be on it for 6 months. It's kind of like a pilot, and then after that, who knows? We'll see. They're going to be looking at things like health markers that aren't anything to do with weight. So, like, for example, blood pressure, or if they're pre-diabetic, or all of these different things, anxiety, depression, things that we can look to improving once we change our focus from our bodies being a problem, which is what we're told constantly, and actually let's shift that narrative and help people realize that it's not actually them that's the problem. Yeah.
Amazing. It's such a great thing to be able to promote movement as kind of something fun, and switch the focus from what can you do and not what you can't do, which I feel like a lot of the nutrition programs do. I mean, for those that don't know, Slimming World, kind of like all of these diet programs, sort of maybe Weight Watchers is kind of the most known, or WW as they're called now, sort of working with, I think Slimming World also works with points, and then they have their own language. So they have like the slimmer of the week and the sinner of the week. So once again, we're very deep in diet culture with the language that they use. They might promote sort of a healthy lifestyle at the base, but it's still embedded in such a deep diet culture context that you're not disconnecting the two. You're always connecting food to kind of a sin or something that you have to work off. And a lot, like, what's a big a big criticism from an intuitive eating point of view of these programs is that you don't really work with hunger or fullness because maybe you have some points left and you want to use them even though you're not hungry. So it's really not promoting like a sustainable lifestyle. And also these programs kind of want you to be a member for as long as possible. So that also shows with all of diet culture that it doesn't work, because if it's something that you have to be tied to for the rest of your life, how can that be a sustainable practice?
Exactly. I mean, it's so obvious to us, and it's so obvious that that should be the way it is, but unfortunately, I think people are so embedded in it, and it's so difficult for them to see. And it's like, well, this is what is done because this is what's always been done, and that's it. And yeah, it's difficult and it's frustrating because you're this work that I'm doing with the NHS, obviously the NHS is an umbrella term. You've got different primary care networks, you've got different places within within the NHS. And so when I start approaching other primary care networks, it is going to be, whether or not they listen to me or whether or not they even consider having the same thing as this place is in Nottingham, will be down to the clinical director's own biases, and it will be down to whether how open they are, which will dictate the health of that whole primary care network. And often primary care networks are made up of sometimes like 10 GP surgeries across a big area, and it's frustrating because it's like there are so many biases, and that is what is damaging health, and it's irritating because they will then argue and say, oh no, it's fat people that are a burden on the NHS and all of this stuff, where actually they looked inwards and realized that actually it's the weight stigma. But they don't want to admit that, because then they'd have to take responsibility, and the government would have to take responsibility, and it would be all this whole thing. Whereas at the moment, it's very much personal responsibility. It's a lot easier to kind of an approach to take in a government and in a whole. Yeah, I mean that's a whole nother
a whole other story.
Yeah.
It's amazing because when you also think about saving money, prevention is such an important thing, right? And if you think about, those people that then discover, oh, there's fun in movement and there's joy in food, and then they maybe have, kids or children, and then there's other it sort of snowballs into how then your bias, how that affects others. So it's just such an important ball to get rolling, but it's kind of like you said, it's dependent on like an individual bias almost, and that's really, and that can be good or bad depending on your point of view, right?
Yeah I would say it takes a lot of strength of character to be able to kind of look back and look at, actually, is this something that's healthy? Is this something that's healthy for me? Is this something healthy to my clients, my patients, whatever it may be? And to actually be really truly honest, and it's not nice to know that it's difficult for some people to admit they're wrong, and they have been wrong, and they've caused harm, and not intentionally. And many of these people are very unintentional about it. I say the majority of people are, but it's just a lack of education, ironically, because they would say that fat people need educated. And a real kind of like willingness to actually really listen, and if you've not had that lived experience yourself, it can be very difficult to put yourself in other people's shoes. It takes a certain, I would say, strength of character. It takes a certain person to be able to do that, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have all these, like, a lot of health bases on studies, right? And a study can go so many ways, and sometimes you really have to look into the parameters of what really happened rather than just an outcome. And I've had an episode on my podcast where I spoke about the BMI, and if you use studies that sort of feature the BMI, you're already using a metric that's just not evidence-based. So like you might as well not really use the whole study altogether. And then when you have like these metrics such as the BMI that you use, then you feel like your weight stigmatized bias is going to be proven again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's very frustrating.
And I think sometimes you have people in larger bodies that maybe they struggled themselves. And I had this conversation with someone, they actually are a member of one of these weight programs, and they are now moving their body a lot more, so they have a kind of for them a healthier lifestyle. And now they kind of see, back then I was just lazy. So I think there's also that lived experience that can almost go into a negative way, because you think your lived experience, because you maybe struggled with your mental, physical health, and that led to a certain lifestyle, you think, everyone is just, fat people are just lazy, because maybe that's what happened to you personally, even though the word lazy is already such a, but you know what I mean? They can sometimes go, I just needed to, get my act together. And so that's what other people need to do as well. And it's like, well, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I think that's what makes it, going back to what we'd said before about a magical place. Like it's everybody that's come into the community of body image fitness, and everybody that teaches, and they all know this. There's nobody that we feel like we have to argue with. There's nobody that we have to convince. And because we all have done the work in that we're to be more accepting of ourselves, it's so much easier to then be accepting of other people and to be really, really, really supportive in that way, and to then to be able to receive support back. And I think, I think that's one of the key sort of takeaways. And there's so many people that, for example, in the fitness industry, that are very hateful. I would go as far as to say towards people in larger bodies, and a lot of that can come from their own insecurities and their own, they are trying everything, they're doing all the quote unquote right things, and to get this body, and some of them are achieving it, and so because they're achieving it, they just think, well, why don't these fat people do what I'm doing, and then they will look like me, and and a lot of people in the health industry as a whole will put their own kind of identity attached to their beliefs. And I think that that's when you try and change their beliefs, it's like you're attacking their identity. And that's where a lot of people sort of like dig their heels in, and there's a lot of people kind of then become angry and outraged and say no, it's, and try and fight against it. And it's I know sometimes I'm just kind of like at the point now where just pick your battles, and some people you're going to be able to convince. The luckily overall my experience was good with these educational awareness sessions that I gave to these primary care workers. I think some of them were kind of just hadn't quite got it, but then also it was like 40 minutes. You can't expect someone's whole view to change in 40 minutes, but the wonderful thing is what they were open to listen. And I think as well, because I condensed these lived experiences from all of these interviews that I did. I condensed them into like a 20-minute, I was probably a little bit less. And that was powerful. That was really powerful, because you could see the emotion, you could hear it, you could really like this is what they were experiencing, and it's very, very obvious that that is not beneficial to their health. And a lot of these doctors and nurses would never have heard it from that perspective before. So that was quite good to see. But it's just you need to get the right people to want to listen and to want to be open. And unfortunately, not everyone's open.
No, sadly not. But I mean, what you're doing is amazing, to talk about, to educate people on what's actually the problem, and then maybe you just plant a seed for now, and maybe that eventually will prosper, and that's all we can hope for. But I just wanted to go back to, you mentioned that your members. So who are kind of your members? Where do they come from? What are their needs? Sort of what led them to body image fitness?
It's a large variety of reasons. I think the main one that kind of seems to keep cropping up is that they just want to be able to work on their relationship with movement, work on health in the best way that they can, in an environment where they're not going to feel any shame, is sort of the primary goal. It's that they as I said, the majority, well, all of them know about diet culture, and as a result, they really do not want to be in a fitness space where they know that it's going to be talked about calories, or the assumption is that you're there to lose weight, or and it's that main, they've come from a background of perhaps disordered eating, or even eating disorders, and they just are at the point now where they've done with dieting. They want to start feeling good about themselves, and they want to work on their fitness. They want to feel strong or flexible, or at peace with their bodies, or just at peace in general. And that this is kind of a platform that will help them with all of those things.
Yeah, amazing. As it should be. They're right, and it should be just it's so simple what they want. It's not a lot to ask.
No, it's really not.
It's just when you might get triggered by something, and I've heard stories, and I don't really go to many gyms or sort of workout sessions and that kind of stuff. But you hear stories about instructors saying, now one more round for that donut later, or whatever. It's just the audacity to talk about something like that. I don't understand it. We're here to move. Like, why can we just disconnect food and movement once for all?
I remember being shouted at when I was at my slimmest. I mean, that bit of information is irrelevant, because it never should have been shouted. Never should have been shouted at me. Strip the fat, keep going. You need to get rid of that fat. Strip it off. It's like, but that's not how this works. Like, what? Just you're using my hatred towards my own body to try and motivate me. How is that going to be beneficial in the long run, or even in the short term? Like, it's not. But yeah, I think especially up here where I live in Newcastle, there's a hell of a lot of gyms like that, because there's a lot of focus on aesthetics and how you look, and there's a lot of focus on before and after photo. Summer shred, and that gym that I used to go to, like, I'll have a little nose, because I did send the owner a long letter. I think it was a Facebook messenger of, like, actually, this is damaging and this is the reason why. He's obviously not taking any of it on board, but then why would he? His approach is
he's making money off it, right? So
he's making money, and he's just trying to get people on for a 6-week summer shred.
Lovely.
So I'm just like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for nothing. Yeah. All right, Kim. A last question that I have for you. Actually, it's a two-parter, but the first one is, what is, at least currently, your favorite sort of self-care activity? And the other one is sort of, what is a way for you to practice body acceptance or body respect?
I'll be completely honest with you. At the moment, self-care activities are not as top of the list of my priorities what they should be, which is really not great. I'm very, very, very busy at the moment, and but when I do, I love a swim. I love going swimming. I love swimming outdoors. I love going for a nice gentle walk. I do love teaching my twerk classes. Like last night I taught a class and I was so happy. I was so tired like an hour before, and I was thinking, how on earth am I going to do this? But as soon as I put some music on and started like learning the routine, I was like, oh no, this is, and even though it was work, I got so much joy from that. What was your other, what's the self?
About body respect and body acceptance, what is a way for you to practice that? It might go they might go hand in hand.
So today I had a photo shoot on Monday, and it was for a press release, and the photos, I hadn't seen the photos, but they were, because there's a PR guy that's doing it, and they the first time I saw them was in this article that I got sent in this local like online website, online magazine, and the picture, I was like really unhappy with the photo of myself, and I'm going through a lot of family stuff at the moment. A lot of the way that I feel about myself and not feeling good enough has stemmed from my family. So without going into too much detail, that I've been dealing with a lot of that today, and then this photo came about, and I was like, I was really hard on myself because this feeling of not feeling good enough. And then I looked at this photo, and usually I wouldn't be as hard on myself. And I think that based on this and how I feel looking at this photo, is really questioning, is that true? Is that, these, so what if you look fat? And I use fat as a neutral descriptor, and I know sometimes we use that in an unkind way towards ourselves. We can do, and there's nothing wrong with the word, and it's because of past experiences with my family, and the reason why I feel like that, it's all linked basically. And I think it's just a very long-winded way of me saying how allowing yourself some compassion, allowing that deep level, trying to find that deep level of understanding of where are these feelings coming from, like why do I feel like this, and why does it affect me, and sort of like unpicking it. And like, so for me, that's just mentally I can do that. I think for some people, like journaling on it, but I'm very, yeah, so that's kind of like a really good practice for me to practice body respect, body acceptance. Is like, my body is the way it is. It's capable of amazing things. It is good enough. And the reason why I don't think I look good enough in those photos is because of X, Y, and Z, and that's not my fault. And so it's basically sitting and having a word with myself and going, Kim, stop it. Basically.
I think many people can relate to this, and I feel like these situations, that's usually when like the hard work that you put into it prior really pays off. Anyway, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to me, to talk to us, Kim. All your information about body image fitness, your socials, and like is going to be in the show notes so that people can find you and maybe look into body image fitness and all the amazing stuff that is coming up. And yeah, thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that conversation, Doris. It's really lovely. So now is your turn to be questioned.
Spotlight.
So Um, I always love it when guests introduce themselves and tell the audience a little bit about themselves. So I will let you introduce yourself to the listeners.
Happy to. So my name is Doris. I'm originally from Austria and I live in Berlin, Germany now, which is maybe the hint of an accent that you might hear. And I am a freelance yoga teacher and dietitian. I focus on trauma-informed yoga, so a yoga approach that is about regulating the nervous system and has many other sort of aspects. So it's a little different approach to yoga. And then I'm an intuitive eating dietitian, so like a non-diet approach towards nutrition, and I love the work that I do, and I feel like both the intuitive eating and the trauma-informed yoga, like both trainings, they were kind of this missing puzzle for my work, because the dietetics just, it didn't feel right to tell people what to do and what not to do. And then on came intuitive eating, and then same for the yoga. It was sort of do this, don't do that. That's how it's supposed to be. And then trauma-informed yoga came into my life, and it's like, these sort of very gentle, kind approaches came into my life and really changed it. And yeah, I work as a freelancer, do, things all around, really, just, sharing with people my approach to yoga, to diet, and that's what I do.
That's lovely. And you're also an instructor on the Body Image Fitness platform as
Yes.
well. You teach yoga on a Friday morning. So you touched on a little bit about trauma-informed yoga. Can you go into a little bit more detail? I've heard the term trauma-informed before, but what does that actually mean? Can you just explain a little bit more?
Happy to, and I can understand it sort of raises a question of what does that mean. So it's not like, you might be familiar with certain yoga styles such as vinyasa, hatha, or yin, or whatever, restorative. Trauma informed is kind of more of a method rather than a style. So it can be kind of included in any yoga style, really. And so we have a few things that we do in trauma informed yoga, or that we don't do. So one of the really important things is to give people agency. So, or let me backtrack a little bit. So trauma-informed yoga is kind of to create a safer space for people, so that people that maybe have had trauma or stress. For the body, trauma and stress are quite similar. It's a little bit of how this happens is different, but our body reacts with like tension and various things, just very briefly to go into this. And so we kind of want to make a space where people with trauma feel comfortable, and we also want to prevent trauma from happening. And so this agency is a really important thing, because that's people with trauma, they didn't have agency. So you want to give people agency. So that might be visible in language. So you say, I invite you to do this. It's not like you have to do this. It's not close your eyes. It's like you may close your eyes. So the language is slightly different, and it's sometimes these subtle changes that have quite a big effect. For example, when I have yoga classes with people not in the offline world, I have consent cards in terms of touch. It's about offering people time to take a break and to really, sometimes instructors might say there is time to take a break, but then you don't feel like there really is a space for that. So it's about really clear communication, and it's about regulating the nervous system. That's kind of the trauma aspect, or the trauma-informed aspect about it, really, is that so our nervous system so we have a kind of baseline of how our nervous system goes up and down. Sometimes you might be quite awake, you feel quite active, and then other times you feel kind of tired. And sometimes there can be spikes to go either up and down. And with various techniques such as conscious touch, or we use the breath, or we ground. So there's quite a few techniques that we can do that can help soothe the nervous system. So for example, if people have kids, if you have an anxious child, what do? You hug your child, you hold it, and you rock it. And that's, for example, something that's still very soothing to our nervous system even as adults. So for example, we can, we might invite people to go into a hug and maybe sway side to side. So in my yoga classes, whatever I do, even if it's not labeled trauma informed, I still always teach trauma informed. If I label it more trauma informed, it might go a little bit more into the depth, but really there's actually not really a big difference, because I'm not gonna not offer that approach. I just can't do it anymore. So there's quite often some swaying in my classes, or just an invitation to do something or not do something, or grounding. So it's all these techniques, they're kind of adaptable, or like you can just do them really in any setting.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like everybody should be trauma informed, to be honest.
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't
it's
see the downside of it, really.
yeah, it's how did you find the non-diet world? Is it something that you have always been, have you always sort of been in this kind of anti-diet space, or have you been heavily in diet culture and then you discovered it?
I mean, I have a bachelor's degree in diet culture. Do you know what I mean? So that's one of the kind of founders of intuitive eating, Evelyn Tribole, who I did my training with. That's what she said, and that really resonated with me, because yes, as a dietitian, it's a really important work, because in hospital you have people with kidney malfunction, and then there's some conditions where you really need to say, okay, this is not like, you can't have that or that, because of your body literally can't handle it. It's not about throwing any diet in the sense of a certain way of eating out of the window. No, but I wouldn't say that my training was anything remotely non-diet. We had the BMI, we had weight loss, metabolic syndrome, all that kind of stuff. But I did my training 10 years ago, and I didn't work as a dietitian for quite some time, because I just didn't feel comfortable in the space. And then as I started to work a bit more freelance, I also did a bit of sort of blog posts and writing, and I came across a dietitian in the US who was an intuitive eating dietitian, and sort of got introduced into this world. And I thought, that sounds interesting. And then did a little bit more research, and then kind of, like you said before, once you find this resource, then other resources pop up. And I'm not really sure how one thing led to another, but sort of eventually I decided that I'm going to do this training. And yeah, I'm so grateful I did. It was such an eye-opening experience. And I feel like even though it was shorter, I learned so much more about like food, and also our relationship with food, because it felt very in my training, not so much in terms of the psychology of eating, or hunger and satiety and all these very basic things that were kind of skipped, and sort of straight into how to deal with this and this and this. So no, I wouldn't say I was in any non-diet space. I mean, I'm now in a kind of community, but I would say even with my clients, or when I work for bigger companies, it's still very hard to find a more non-diet space.
Yeah, yeah. How with your you were born in Austria,
Yeah.
and did you grew up in Austria, did
Yeah.
you? How was diet culture in Austria? Is it different cultures? I mean, is it a lot? Is it very strict? I mean, how is it now as well?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think at least certain parts of Austria, you still have a bit more the people that live more mountainous, so you have kind of a more active life. So I don't think for them it's kind of diet or body is something they think about, because it's sort of not really important for them. But in the bigger cities, certainly is, we have the gyms that do the shreds and the whatnot, and the weight loss and so on. I wouldn't say it's sort of as big as it might be in America, but with the rise of social media, you have things that travel very easily, and certain, like the language with the thigh gap and whatnot, like
Yeah,
it's all present there. I would say overall in the kind of German speaking market, or like regions, the intuitive eating it's very behind.
Yeah.
A lot of the research is in English. I mean, that's kind of, it's a global language anyway, right? So there's always that disadvantage. But in like, one of the disadvantages in the German regions is that the term for dietitian in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria, 3 different terms. So you have big confusion about nutrition in general. And then you have in Germany, it's not so in Austria, but in Germany, all these Weight Watchers and stuff, we have all of these as well. But in Germany, you even have, which is even worse, because you have an intuitive eating program. It's because it's not a term you can protect, right? Intuitive eating is not, you can't sort of copyright it and say no one can use it. You have a company that works with intuitive eating and is led by a doctor. And, unfortunately, once there's a doctor that is the face of anything, people feel like, oh, that's it. Super trustworthy, must be legit. And that's an intuitive eating program, but it is a weight loss program. And it's kind of I mean, yes, they have some mindfulness stuff and so on. So there might be some things that overlap, but overall it's still like more in embedded in the diet space. So that's such a big disadvantage that you have intuitive eating here. And then you have that company. And the last thing I'll say to that, the basic book Intuitive Eating that got translated into German, and you won't believe the name of the title. It's called Intuitive Weight Loss.
Oh my goodness.
And it was that's a decision by the publisher. It's obviously not a decision made by the authors. And it's called, I mean, we have the term eating in German. It's not like that doesn't, you can literally translate it. It's not that hard. And I had a discussion, sorry, I get really animated about this, but because it really annoys me. That I had a discussion with the publisher about this, because also, like, every time I'm going to now recommend a client this book, I'll have to say that's the name, but like I can't just recommend it without, I'd always have to attach something, or just, I can't just say that's the book to buy, because they're going to be like, what is she recommending here? And they tried to explain, I don't know, I think they used terms of like, oh, that way people will find it that maybe wouldn't have found it otherwise. And it was really sort of BS explanation of why. And even on the back, it says slim and beautiful, it's like on the back cover, sort of like, what the hell is this?
Sells. It's because it sells.
Yeah.
I think like it's so easy to put weight loss on things because they know that's what sells. Like I've got a business coach who said, a few months ago, I was struggling a little bit, and she was like, maybe just take away the term non-diet, and then, but I'm like,
no,
that's the whole like point, because then we're going to attract other people to the community that want to lose weight, and then it just ruins the whole thing. And then, there's nothing, I will caveat that by saying, like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose weight. There's no judgment. If people do want to lose weight, it's a completely valid feeling. But we always just say is pop that feeling to one side and concentrate on all the other benefits. But yeah, that's so frustrating that now actually who that book was written for, the intuitive eating book, people aren't actually going to find it, and then they're going to read it and they're going to be like, well, how do I lose weight then? And then it's a really bad decision. Obviously the decision was a financial one. It was purely for financial gain, because they wouldn't have cared, or they've bought the book already, so it doesn't matter. So it's not about helping people. That's really frustrating. I'm not surprised you get animated about it. With your, how long have you been a yoga teacher for?
I think, well, maybe working as a yoga teacher, let's see, 4 years, I think, let's say.
Okay. And were you away from diet culture when you discovered yoga?
My story with my story with diet culture is kind of, I'm not really sure about it, to be honest with you. So I've never, I live in a slightly larger body than I have for most of my life. So I've kind of ever so slightly had encounters where people told me, maybe eat less carbs and move more, and that, without obviously checking with me, because why should they? And so it's kind of not really been, and that just speaks so much about diet culture. It's often not on your mind if you don't live in a larger body, and or like you're around it, but you're not like consciously aware, because people don't comment on your body in like a negative way.
Yeah.
I think there's a problem with, I experienced like a trauma quite early on in my childhood, and a lot of my memories from teenager and so on, they're not there. Some of them, there's some people told me certain things, and that's actually quite interesting with trauma, where it sometimes can almost wipe your memory. And then it's difficult when other people tell you their memory, and then that can be almost like replaced as your memory, but you're not really sure if it, like, because their memory is also going to be a little bit different than mine. So I'm not there. I might have a little bit of a sort of teenage phase of disordered eating, but other than that, it wasn't really kind of a big thing for me most of my life. I think at some point, I was more, because I became vegan about 10 years ago, and then within I was always an ethical vegan, and then there within the vegan community, or there's also diet culture everywhere, right? And there is this, I don't know whether you've come across it more, but it's like this whole food plant-based diet, and that can go into like a no oil kind of way of living, which is already, sort of has a lot of similarities to certain diets, really. So that was, I think, at that point, part of my life a little bit. I'm no longer a part of this, like, luckily, and sort of distance myself from it. But it was very easy to be swept into this from a like health point of view, and then you realize that you're using a little bit of oil and feel like it's really indulgent, and then it really isn't. But I think with the yoga, it was never about like a kind of transformation or something for me. I know that people use it in that way, and there is, I sometimes, because I have a YouTube channel, like a teeny tiny YouTube channel of my own, and I sometimes look into, okay, what are people looking for, and then weight loss is one of the first things that pops up, and I don't know, it's just nothing I would like. Yoga for me is its own thing and has nothing to do with weight in anything.
I kind of feel like that it just doesn't, it's not yoga then. If you're putting weight loss in the same sentence as yoga, then it's not yoga. That's not what yoga is. That's not.
Yeah, but like your coach says, right? It just, people will click on it and buy it and whatever, practice it.
It sells, and that's the sad thing, and that's why diet culture is worth billions, because we've been sold this dream, and we've been sold this shame, and it's difficult. There has been some yoga teachers that have stepped away from using the term yoga because they are concerned about sort of cultural appropriation and things, and sort of the spirituality, and if you're not spiritual, then should you be teaching yoga? And I mean, what's your take on sort of cultural, it's cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation?
Oh, that is such a, like, it's sort of walking a tightrope, really. I find it's so hard. On one hand, I think, okay, yoga was kind of brought into the West. It's not something that was per se, taken like other things in a colonial context. But also, once again, on this, I'm sure that you can find there's nuance to this, and how was it brought over and whatsoever. So I try to educate myself, by following teachers that have a connection to India or the yogic culture. And for example, stop saying namaste at the end of the class because that's saying hello. So, it's sort of,
Yeah.
it's not something that I even don't really use the term. Like I've kind of sort of not used it really. So I find it important that you educate yourself, and I never, have the bindi, which is this little dot between your eyebrows on your third eye. I never walk around with that. So I think in the spiritual context, I mean, that's something that I definitely step away from. I think I'd still just not using the term yoga. It's also kind of a bit of a simplicity kind of thing. I don't really know what I'd call it other than that. And then at the same time, I find sometimes the like yoga has also, even like yoga from India, we have some gurus where there's now, claims of sexual harassment and all that. So there's quite a lot of misuse of power as well. So I'm sort of trying to distance myself from that without trying to disconnect myself from the practice. Like I find it really, really difficult, to be honest with you, and kind of educate myself, but try not to bring it too much into the practice, which might be like a cop out if I think about it, but sort of that's the route or like the path that I've kind of chosen for myself.
I would agree because I obviously am a very new yoga instructor, and I still will call my sessions yoga, because there is that then kind of conversation of, well, what else would we call it? And I think that there's a lot of nuance to it, and it's a tricky subject, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
It is just, I just find it quite an interesting topic, and it's just everyone's got different takes on on this, and I think some people will feel more strongly than others, and that doesn't necessarily make them wrong and us right, and vice versa. It's just different approaches, and I think like with anything to do with this, it's approaching it in the most respectful way that we as individuals can, and kind of how our own personal views of it, and then just trying to stay true to that as well. But like with many things, there's a lot of nuance, and it's a complex, and there's two sides to every story and things. So yeah. Wow. Well, it's been such a lovely chat. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast, and for you coming on my podcast. It's been lovely. And was there anything else that you wanted to say before we stop?
No, thank you as well for inviting me. And yeah, if maybe people want to check out the Friday morning session
Yes.
with me, or the recordings of that, that would be great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. There might be some more English interviews, English episodes coming up, but we will return to German very soon. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and I hope you tune in soon.